got to give a lot of credit to the Clemson Tigers and Dabo Swinney for the way that they schedule in the non-conference. Of course, they play South Carolina every year. Then they usually play another big non-conference game, and that will be the case again this season. They will play LSU in the non-conference. Let's take a look at all of their non-conference schedule. LSU, and then they also play Troy, Furman, and they play on the road at South Carolina. Now, like I said, a lot of these teams that play a rivalry game outside of their conference and they have a big opponent, they won't necessarily play another big game. But Clemson seems to do that a lot of years, most years actually. Played Georgia, of course, last year, and this year it's going to be LSU. So that's the non-conference. Again, you look at Furman and Troy and say, well, it's not too tough. But I think that's pretty fair when you're playing LSU and South Carolina. So who do they play at home and away? Let's look at just who they play in the ACC. Syracuse, SMU, Duke, and Florida State at home. And then on the road, Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Boston College, and Louisville. So we'll start with that road schedule. You know, there is no opponent on there that you'd say Clemson can't beat, or they're going to be huge underdogs against. In fact, they might not be underdogs in any of those games. You know, Georgia Tech's a good team. That'll be a tough game. And Louisville could be a good team. So that could be a tough one. Of course, we know how the game went last year. Bill Belichick taking over North Carolina. That one could be interesting. So not a brutal road schedule by any means, but some tricky games in there with Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and Louisville. I don't think Boston College is going to be too good this year. We'll see. And then, of course, that South Carolina game in the non-conference. And then at home, Syracuse, SMU, Duke, and Florida State. You feel pretty good about those games. If you're Clemson, SMU could be a challenge, but we'll see how good they are. And will they be able to kind of keep up with where they were last season? So that's the home and away. Let's break it down now week by week. They'll open up with LSU on August 30th. That's just going to be a huge game. Can't wait to see that one. Then on September 6th, they'll play Troy at home, so back-to-back home games to start things out. Then they go on the road for the first time at Georgia Tech, September 13th. That is a huge early season game. Georgia Tech, a team that I think is going to be pretty good this year, and you got to play on the road in that one. So that one could be a challenge for sure. If they can get through LSU and Georgia Tech and start off 3-0, you feel pretty good, honestly, about the rest of the season. They've got Syracuse on September 20th. That game will be at home. And then they get the bye week on September 27th, their first bye week. And so that's a pretty good spot for it because it's before playing back-to-back road games. They'll play North Carolina on the road October 4th, and then it's Boston College on the road October 11th. So back-to-back road games there. But you'd like to have them in that order. You'd rather play North Carolina first coming off the bye week than have to play them after going on the road to play Boston College. They got they've got SMU October 18th. That one will be a big game. Of course, rematch of the ACC Championship. I'm really curious to see. I feel like I know how good Clemson is going to be. I think they're going to be a really good team this year. SMU, I think, will be good, but will they be on that same level they were at last year? We'll have to kind of wait and see there. But that's going to be a big game. And then they get that second bye week on October 25th. And they'll have 5 games to close out the season. Duke on November 1st at home, and then Florida State on November 8th at home. Back-to-back home games there. Louisville, this one could potentially be it could be the toughest game on this schedule, depending on how these opponents, these other teams wind up being this year. You know, South Carolina, that one kind of jumps out to me on the road. LSU obviously going to be tough, but you look at Louisville and Georgia Tech, those games are going to be tough as well. So that's going to be a big one in the middle of November. They follow that up with a home game against Furman and close things out with South Carolina on the road on November 29th. So definitely some tricky games on the road. You feel pretty good, though, about the home schedule, especially if they can get past LSU. So how does this stack up with the other teams in the ACC? If you look at their opponents this year, what their records were last year, Clemson's ACC opponents were 36-28 last season. That's a 56% win percentage. So they do have one of the tougher overall conference schedules in the ACC. You know, it's not horrible, but the fact that they don't get to play any of the teams like at the bottom, and you know, we're figuring Florida State's going to be a little bit better this year, but they don't get to play many of those teams near the bottom. That does make this schedule with the conference schedule being potentially the 4th toughest, and then also having LSU and South Carolina on there. It does turn out to be a pretty tough schedule, but a manageable schedule for Clemson in 2025.